Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining me. My name is Tandin Tlapo, and today we are looking at number and bar scale. Did you know that scale shows real places and objects of real size being reduced or enlarged by a certain value? By the end of this lesson, you should be able to perform calculations that include scale, calculate actual distance and length between 2 points using the given scale. Right, so now these are the concepts that we'll be looking at in today's lesson, whereby we will be looking at calculations that include scale as well as the distance and length. What you should know by now, you should be able to work with ratios, be able to convert using the converting factor, and be able to measure length. Right, now let us look at what you should be knowing by now under working with ratios. Now let us look at the first example that is given to us, which is number 1. It says, write the following ratios in simplified form. Now when they talk of a simplified form, it means you should keep your answer whereby you can no longer simplify it any further. Now, when we look at number A, it says 12 is 208. So now when you can work with these two values, you can simply look for a number that can be divided or absorbed in both values without giving you any remainder. Now with your calculator, it is easy because you can simply say 12 divided by 108 using your fraction pattern when you are working with a Casio calculator. Now when you say 12 is 208, so now it will give you 1 is to 9. So on your fraction pattern, you can simply say 12 over 108. It will give you a simplified form, which will be 1 is to 9. Then number B, same procedure. You must leave your answer whereby it can no longer be simplified further. When you use your fraction pattern, 45 over 900, it will give you 1 is to 20. So this is a simplified form because you know you can no longer simplify these values. Right, now also on what we should know by now, converting using a converting factor or a scale, we are given these tables here whereby it clearly shows you how to multiply and how to divide when you are moving from one unit to the other. So now you can have a look at that. Let us look at the first one. If you are moving from a kilometer to a centimeter, you are simply going to multiply by 100,000. From a centimeter to a kilometer, you just divide by 100,000. So now having the first example, convert 24 kilometers to meters. So you are moving from a kilometer to meters. So now we are going to use this one because you are moving from kilometers to meters. So you have your 24 kilometers. So you're going to multiply this by 1,000. So this will give you 24,000 meters. Also take note that it is very important to indicate the units where you are converting to. So if they are saying from kilometers to meters, you must also show at the end when you have written your answer that I have moved from kilometers, now I'm at my meters, right? So now looking at our number 2, convert 100 kilometers to miles. If you are given 1 mile is equals to 1,609 kilometers, right? So now if you are given a converting factor or a scale, you also need to take note that when you are moving from let's write it here, from a bigger scale to a smaller scale, you will multiply. Then when you are moving from a smaller unit or scale, you are going to divide. So that is what you need to keep in mind. But then I will also show you as to how do you know when to multiply and when to divide. So now here we are given that 1 mile is equals to 1,609 kilometers. So now we are to convert 100 kilometers to miles. So we are simply going to place the units accordingly. Remember, the miles will be on one side and the kilometers will be on the same side. So having our kilometers this side on our right. So now we are moving from a smaller scale to a bigger scale. So what do? We divide. So we are going to divide from the bottom. So we have 100 kilometers, and this is divided by 1,609 kilometers. So this will give us a total amount of 62,15 miles. So this is what you'll be having. Now, moving on. Now, when you're dealing with maps under scale, and you will have to know, or you will have to have your ruler as well as your pencil. That's when we are dealing with maps. So now, using your ruler will have centimeters as well as meters. So now, looking at this one that we are having here, it shows the centimeters. On the same line, it shows the millimeters. So now with the centimeters on your ruler, you won't be having these small values that we are having there. With centimeters, you will have from 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 moving forth. And then with your millimeters, you will have your 10. It will start with a 0, then the first value will be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, moving on. Now, also, you must also know that when you are measuring in centimeters, that's where now you will have a value with a comma. It's possible. But with millimeters, your values that you have measured will always be as whole numbers. Right, so now let us look at this one, whereby we are to measure the length of a distance from point A to point B. Now, having your ruler and your pencil, looking at point A, we have this circle here. So when you want to measure the distance between these two, firstly, you take your pencil and you draw a line at the beginning of the first circle. Then you draw another line at the end of your second circle, so that as we are seated in class, we can all get the same answers, not different answers or far apart from others. So now when you have your ruler, you'll start putting it at 0, not at 1. You'll start put your ruler at 0. When you measure, you start from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So now in this case, measuring our distance in centimeters. So we have 4, so we are going to have 4,2 centimeters. That's when we measure in centimeters. Then when we measure in millimeters, remember we've said we are always going to have a whole number. It's not going to be a comma. Then we are going to have 42 millimeters. So that's how we measure using the 2 units. Right, so now having your 2 units measured, let's say for an example, the actual answer, it was 4,2 centimeters. Then as we are seated, maybe we cannot get the same answer, but having our 4,2, another answer that will be accepted will be 4,1 as well as 4,3. Meaning even if you did not get this actual measurement, but the value before and the value answer after will also be accepted. Same applies to your millimeters. If the actual answer is 42 millimeters and then the answer before that will be 41, it will be accepted, as well as 43 millimeters will be accepted. Now, let us go to the terminology you should know or remember. You should be able to calculate the actual distance as a crow flies between 2 points. Now, remember the crow flies, it's measuring the distance from point A to point B on a straight line. Now, let us quickly go to an ad break. We'll be right back.